Hi, and welcome to week 3 of Legal and Political Aspects. I enjoyed reading your papers this week. They were very good, so I enjoyed that. Don't forget that we're having class on Thursday night, not Wednesday night, Thursday night at 6 p.m. Because I'm traveling on Wednesday, so we're going to do it on Thursday night. You're doing a great job in the discussion boards, but some of you aren't posting enough, so you need to post at least 3 times a week to get full credit. So 3 times. If you post up to 5 or more times, I give extra credit for the discussion board. But make sure you get in there at least 3 times. It helps further the discussion. You're not seeing each other face to face, so this is the one way you communicate with each other, and it builds those relationships. So the more you post, the better you get to know your classmates. A few of you had some problems with APA format, and just a reminder that you're going to use Times New Roman font, size 12, throughout the whole paper, not just part of it, the whole paper. There's a template that's in our class. If you look over on the left-hand side, there's a template paper. It says APA formatting help, and there's a template that you can download and just write your paper in that template, and it will be perfect. Or you can go to the Purdue OWL website, and they've got some great resources on using APA format. I'm not super strict on it, but you know, you got to have your references spaced correctly. You got to do your title page right. But you know, just simple things. So make sure you're doing those things. Those resources will help you. And this week, if you're on the presentation schedule, you're preparing a 3-minute talk. 3 minutes is very short. So from that video on Proposition 13, that first to worst video, you're going to pick one thing to talk about. Don't try to cover the whole video because there's not enough time. So pick one thing that resonated with you or brought concerns to you. And, you know, 3 minutes. That's all you get to talk about it. So don't go overboard. You don't need PowerPoint pictures. You don't need anything, any kind of graphics. It's just kind of a discussion online. And that will be in the class if you're scheduled for week 3. Some of you are scheduled for week 3. Some of you are scheduled for week 5. If you need that list again, let me know, and I'll send it to you. Okay, so we're not going to go too much in depth on the chapters that we read this week because you just covered them in your last class on human resources. Probably a repeat of a lot of things you know. One of the things that you need to look up and go to is the CCTC, which is the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. If you haven't looked up your credential there, it's a great place to know when your credential is due for renewal. Thank goodness they took away that professional development that you had to submit every 5 years that you had to do. You just say, yeah, I've done professional development. This class would, university courses will count for that professional development in case you ever get audited. But it's really good to know a lot about credentialing, especially as an administrator, because you can't put certain credential types into certain classes. And not so much in elementary school because we all have multiple subject credentials, but in middle school and high school it makes a big difference. You got to know what kind of credential you have. You can look up anybody's credential online. So if you have just some basic information, the teacher's name and where they work, you can look up anybody's credential. This is public information, so it's nice to know. I had a teacher once that he didn't have the right credential, and I said, oh, I don't have the money to renew it. So, well, you better find the money because we can't keep you employed without that credential. He didn't quite believe that, and he let his credential lapse and fired. So you've got to have your credential up to date. It's not a district requirement. It's not a principal requirement. It's a requirement of the state of California. So in case you ever run into that, get an obstinate teacher, just remind them it's not personal. You've got to have your credential renewed and up to date. All right. In the chapters, I wanted you to look at page 189 through 194, which is about teacher dismissal. As you get into being a principal or an AP, these are things that you really need to know about how you can fire a teacher. Really long, arduous process to get anybody fired unless they've done something crazy like, had sex with a kid or something. But it still takes a long time to get somebody fired. Even though they say like you can fire somebody for lack of moral turpitude, it's really hard to prove. So you got to keep good documentation, and it's going to take a long time to get somebody fired. They may be sitting in a room waiting to be fired or waiting for their dismissal hearing for several years. So you got to have really good documentation for that. The other thing I want you to remember as you move into administration is that administrators have no right to due process. So let's say you tick off the assistant superintendent or you make somebody on the board mad and they decide to fire you, which they can because you serve at the discretion of the board. You don't have the right to say, hey, I want a hearing, I want to go through the dismissal process. You don't get that as an administrator. So make sure you really want to be an administrator and you understand it's a political job as well as, you know, making sure the kids get a good education. You also have to please your boss and please those members of the board, even though some of them may have some crazy ideas every once in a while. If you were hired in that district as a teacher and you get fired as an administrator, you have the right to be reemployed as a teacher if you got tenure in that district. Like I got tenure in one district and then recently moved to a new district. So if the new district I'm working in now didn't like me, decided they didn't want to have me anymore, I could be fired and I would not get a job as a teacher. They'd say, no, we don't want you at all because I did not get tenure in that district. So that sometimes is the reason why people stay a long time in one district, because you can lose your seniority, you lose your ability to have that tenure. But don't let that limit you. I moved from one district to another and I'm very happy in my new district. I have a lot of opportunities I didn't have in my previous district. So just think carefully before you move. Don't move to a district that's in a lot of turmoil and you may be in trouble too. Also look at that Americans with Disabilities Act. That can be tricky because, you know, it said in the previous part of the chapter that you could fire somebody that was an alcoholic or drug addict unless they haven't proven that they're an alcoholic. Then you've got to give them time in rehab, you've got to give them support, you've got to give them time off. It doesn't have to be paid time off, but you have to give them time off to get themselves back together because alcoholism is considered a medical disease. So you've got to give them that time. We had a teacher once that had bipolar. She was bipolar. And every once in a while she'd go off her medicines and she'd lose her mind. She'd throw her keys at the door. She'd just go crazy. And I was like, well, why can't we fire this person? This is crazy that we have to keep her. And they said, no, she has a mental disability. And as soon as she gets her medicines right, she's okay again. We might have to remove her from the classroom for a little bit until she gets more stable. But you can't fire somebody just for having a mental disability unless it's a danger to the children. Okay? There was one lady that we had that had a doctor write up that she could not be around children. An odd thing for a teacher. And she thought that that meant was she would be able to do independent study or, you know, work in an office. And they fired her because they said, well, it's not reasonable to think that a teacher is not going to work with children, so we're going to let you go. So just kind of brush up on those things. You don't really have to know everything in detail about it, but just in case you get angry with somebody and think, I'm not going to keep this person anymore, there's some rules and laws that you have to follow that are very specific. Your HR department will help you with those things. So I will see you Thursday night at 6 p.m. online, and I hope you have a great week.